Hey everyone, this is Jim from JimmyMan Gaming, and today I'll be doing my first real video here. It is the start of a new gaming marathon I'm going to start doing, because recently the remakes, or the long-awaited remakes, of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire were released under the titles Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So, in order to commemorate this event, I figured I would review every single Pokemon game leading up to the Gen 3 remakes. Now, before I begin, I have to mention that I will be only reviewing the main string of games from Generations 1 through 6, so no spin-offs like Pokemon XD, Ranger, Coliseum, or Stadium, or Mystery Dungeon. So, just strictly the string of games that have appeared on the handhelds from time of origin to the present. Also, another side note, at the time, the only other big RPG series was Final Fantasy, so for the sake of the review and for convenience purposes, I will be comparing the two from time to time. Well, without further ado, I think let's finally take a look at this. So everyone, this is my review on Pokemon Generation 1.
You know it. You love it. It's Pokemon. One of Nintendo's flagship titles and the most popular handheld gaming franchise of all time. Not to mention the second most popular gaming franchise of all time in general. Crazy, right? Released in 1996, Pokemon was an instant success. Development had started as far back as 1989. It took nearly 7 years to develop, and Game Freak nearly went bankrupt in the process. In the end, what we had gotten were 3 amazing games that nearly took the world by storm. Games that spawned trading card games, TV shows, and pretty much any kind of merchandising under the sun. Those games? Pokemon Red, Blue, and Green for the Nintendo Game Boy. There's also Pokemon Yellow as well. Basically, it's a revamped edition made due to the release of the Pokemon anime. Besides getting Pikachu as the starter and a few other cosmetic and gameplay changes, it's exactly the same. We have quite a bit to talk about here, so let's start off with a quick plot summary. So, set in the fictional and not-so-fictional region of Kanto, you play as an 11-year-old fatherless boy that can actually be named whatever you want, but, however, canonically the boy's name is Red. Wait, Red? What, is he like a young Red Foreman from that 70s show? A serious question, I'm actually curious. Maybe it's because his debut was in Pokemon Red. Or because his name was Red in the Pokemon manga. Who the hell cares? I'm looking way too deeply into this. Anyway, Red lives in the quaint little pallet town. The local professor and researcher of Pokemon, Professor Oak, summons you very abruptly after seeing you about to endanger yourself by walking into some tall grass. Professor Oak brings you into his lab where he gives you the choice of picking your first Pokemon: Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle. Me? I always chose Bulbasaur. Charmander was way too overrated, and I really don't care about Squirtle. Alongside you is the professor's grandson and your longtime rival Blue, or Green as he was called in Japan. And of course, as he's most famous for, he's a total dick, and he starts showing it by picking a starter that's resistant to your own. But, like most rivals in Pokemon, he's a complete pushover. Anyway, once you beat him, the professor gives you the Pokédex, a high-tech encyclopedia which records all and any info of any Pokemon you encounter. He gives you the task of traveling throughout the region, collecting all 150 Pokemon, and challenging the 8 Pokemon gyms, which are essentially this game's boss battles, and the Pokemon League, basically kicking off the game's plot. Along the way during your journey, you are soon to battle the forces of the villainous organization, Team Rocket. These guys want nothing more than to abuse and steal Pokemon and use them for their own malevolent misdeeds. In places like Mount Moon, where they plan to steal fossils, Lavender Town, where they overrun Pokemon Tower, and even their own secret hideout. Ultimately, in the end, you make it all the way to the Pokemon League, and on your way to the champion spot, in what could be one of the coolest plot twists in a video game ever. Guess who? That's right, this asshole made it all the way up to the champion title right under your nose. People always say he's ridiculously difficult. Still, I found him to be a total pussy. I don't care. Think of it this way. If you've made it this far, I think you can do it. So, after an unpleasant butt-fucking, Professor Oak finally comes up, giving you all of the glory that his grandson ever so deserved, and thus ending the game. Congratulations, you've just beaten Pokemon. Well, now that the good stuff is out of the way, let's get into the real meat of this game. First off, Red himself has pretty much little to no character whatsoever. He's quite the mute, and the only time he ever actually speaks, so to say, is when answering yes or no questions, and that's about it. Although while your avatar has no real character, the world around you does, and I think that's what really matters here. Then there's the Kanto region itself. It's rather small, and each different location, while it does have its own form of atmosphere, still feels very empty and barren, even in larger, more populated areas like Celadon City, with the exception of course being Lavender Town, sporting the deepest amount of depth out of any area in the game. I mean really, this place was the inspiration for a series of successful ghost stories. Come on, what is it with this fucking music? But thankfully enough, the more streamlined overworld system helps give the world around you more atmosphere. In games like Final Fantasy, you always had one of these. There's no single overworld, and each individual area adds to this, and it works for the kind of world that Pokemon's in. Like any typical JRPG, your main focus is battling. In order to do that, you need to build up your team by catching Pokemon, by exploring the overworld in places with tall grass, the open sea, or underground in caves and dungeons. The more you battle, the more you gain experience, which over time can allow your Pokemon to level up and become stronger, and that is essential if you want to get anywhere. Eventually, after a certain amount of leveling up, some Pokemon will actually evolve into other forms and become even more powerful. But not all Pokemon can evolve simply by reaching a required level. Others may need other influences, like evolutionary stones, or being traded to another trainer, while other Pokemon don't evolve at all. Pokemon also come in several different flavors and types as well, making battling a bit more interesting. Even Pokemon with more than one type as well. There's fire, water, grass, electric, normal, flying, fighting, rock, ice, ghost, dragon, bug, poison, ground, and psychic types, each with their own unique moves, strengths, and weaknesses. Along the way, your Pokemon will also learn different moves, and new moves and attacks can be learned and taught by different means, either by standard training or by the use of TMs and HMs. TMs, or technical machines, are just standard attacks for your Pokemon's moveset, but not all Pokemon are compatible with every one. Then there are HMs, or hidden machines, which are also attacks for your move pool, but can be used outside of battle for different purposes, either pushing boulders, cutting small trees, and even swimming. My god, you can't even swim without a Pokemon's help. How pathetic. Unfortunately, however, HMs can only be used outside of battle after meeting certain requirements, mainly obtaining a particular gym badge. Pokemon can also only learn 4 moves at a time, so whenever you need to fit in a new move, one has to be deleted from the move pool. Then there's battling. In the overworld, typically in areas with grass, water, or caves like I mentioned previously, often you'll be caught up in random Pokemon encounters. This is where you can catch Pokemon and add it to your team. If your party is full, it'll be sent to the PC in the Pokemon Center. Usually the best method for catching wild Pokemon means bringing its health or condition as low as possible and catching it then. With the use of repels, the chances of random encounters is significantly lower, but most of the time it happens sporadically. Battling wild Pokemon still grants you experience, but much lower than that of regular trainer battles. Oh yeah, trainer battles! When a trainer spots you, you're immediately brought into a battle sequence, just like random encounters, but, well, less random. Sometimes you can escape trainers, but most of the time it's impossible to get by without fighting everyone in the area. In comparison to Final Fantasy, the battle system feels a bit more streamlined as well, with less options and a more forward way of organization. Like Final Fantasy, however, as an RPG, it's by the numbers. When you're not exploring, you're battling, and when you're not battling, you're exploring. Simple as that. If you have any experience within the RPG genre, this should be pretty easy to get into. If not, it's still a simple game to pick up and play, and transitioning to this from something more complex will be much smoother than the other way around. Unfortunately, this game is not without its glaring flaws. One of this game's biggest issues lies within its core gameplay. Due to a coding error, certain types in Pokemon had gotten weird effects with their individual stats and overall strengths and weaknesses. For example, in Gen 1, Ghost types had no effectiveness against Psychic types, and Psychics got such a boost to become the most powerful Pokemon in the game. This led many battles to be very unbalanced and often unfair. This would be fixed in later games, but in Gen 1, Psychic types were game-breaking. There are more issues as well, but talking about them all would be a waste of time. But one of the biggest gripes I've had with this game since day one were the glitches! They're everywhere, my god! Often at times it's minor stuff like standing on a tree, but then there's stuff like this! And this! Ugh! And everyone remember Missing Number? I thought so! I had some seriously bad experiences with this game, and the glitches that came with it. Some so bad that I got stuck in Glitch City and I had to restart my entire game! That was one of the worst experiences I've had with these games. Graphically speaking, however, well, actually, to be honest, it's pretty good. Looking at it from a much bigger perspective, it's about as good as your average Game Boy title, I guess. Well, I honestly think I've been spoiled by the likes of other games like Mortal Kombat 2, Ninja Gaiden Shadow, and The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. But while the graphics aren't super, the soundtrack certainly is. The Game Boy didn't have too great of sound quality to begin with, but this could prove anyone wrong. From the somber seas on the SS Anne to the morbid atmosphere of Lavender Town, my favorites of which being the Gym Leader battle theme and the Champion theme. It's just that good. Well everyone, that's it. That's the first generation of Pokemon. As I stated before, it's pretty straightforward and by the numbers for its kind. Picking it up and playing it is an easy enough task, but it's nowhere near as deep or as immersive as other entries in the series, or in the genre itself for that matter. Nowadays, competitive battling with these games seems pointless, and unless you really want to dig deeper into your Pokemon experiences, or just want that feeling of nostalgia, I think Generation 1 should be approached by those who really have more experience with the series itself. But, well, the big question is this. Could I ever recommend this game to anyone today? No, absolutely not. Sure, it's good as a game, and it's great as an RPG, but in comparison with all of the excellent additions and other features from future titles, it just doesn't feel as fresh as it did 16 years ago, especially with all the issues that it brought forth. And overall, I just feel like this game hasn't aged well at all. These games, they're fantastic. It was the start of one of the greatest gaming franchises of all time, but its beginnings were so robust that it's hard to turn back from the now, and it feels more archaic than anything. All I can say is this. I recommend this be approached with caution. Well everyone, thank you all for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this as much as I did making it, because it took 6 days to do, so you better appreciate it. But all joking aside, next time we're going to be looking at this game's successors in the series, Pokemon Generation 2, Gold, Silver, and Crystal.